First, let's talk about the champions of the event that included Baylor this week. That would be Virginia. Virginia secures the title of that event, given all that has happened on campus with Virginia and the victims of the shooting. I mean, just a powerful result, right? It's hard to watch what happened and not feel something inside of us as far as just happiness goes for the moment that was Virginia basketball today, and sadness still for realizing what happened and the lingering effects it's going to have. So it sometimes, we opened the show on the field of 12 last week when this happened, and it's really hard to just pivot and immediately talk sports. But ultimately, that's what we're going to try and do here.
Yeah.
Virginia basketball, I mean, it's a lot of the same dudes that were on last year's Virginia basketball team. And last year's Virginia basketball team was not playing like this year's Virginia basketball team. So, Matt, let's go to you first. What do you think stands out the most as to why this same core group has taken the jump it seems that they've taken early in the season?
Well, I think the more games that you play, right, the more experience that you have, the better that you're going to be. I was watching the end of that game today, and to me, I thought there was a really key moment. I'm pivoting a little bit here and kind of more focused on Illinois and their offensive execution down the stretch. I don't know if you guys remember, with like 2 minutes and 45 seconds to go in the game, there was a stoppage in the play, and they were trying to figure out whose ball it was. And that took a while. I mean, it seemed like it took 5 minutes for the officials to figure out whose ball it was. And coming out of the timeout, Illinois runs a middle pick and roll. They throw one pass, and Shannon shoots a contested three. And you look at the offensive possessions even after that, they never really had any ball movement, player movement. It was one-on-one and let's try to rock out and go. They end the game with 11 assists and 13 turnovers. So not discrediting what Virginia's done. I'm not trying to do that at all, because for them to go out there and I know we may get into the Maui and the battle for Atlantis, but was that the best preseason tournament with those four teams out there? I mean, like, are you kidding? I mean, you've got four teams that all have a legit shot to be in the Final Four. I mean, what an event that was out in Vegas. But, I just thought that Illinois' offense down the stretch, coming out of that timeout with that long of a stop, to have that shot at that moment when I think it was a one-possession game, man, you've got to get better looks coming down the stretch. But you've got to give Virginia credit. Those guys, that core group, being together, coming back, going through last year, going through some adversity, the struggles, getting a little bit hardened, coming back this year. I mean, I know everyone's talking about Carolina and obviously with everything they have coming back and, Duke and all the talent they have, man. But I think it's hard to pick against Virginia in the ACC, in my opinion.
I thought, but to your point, when you talked about the situation with Illinois struggling coming out, I thought it was just the inexperience, because they had Jaden Epps out there and they had Sky Clark. They had two young guards out there, and no one has more experienced backcourt than Virginia has. And one, they're two of the better defenders. So I wasn't surprised that the Virginia guards made plays down the stretch, and Illinois guard kind of made some ill-advised plays, not necessarily getting the right shot for the team. But again, those guys played well. They wouldn't be there without them. But I thought the experience of the backcourt at Virginia was the biggest difference in the game today.
Yeah, I got some Tiger Campbell vibes from Kihei Clark in that game. And I don't often do like the player comparison thing, but like just watching.
This has got to be it for him, right? Clark's got no more eligibility, does he? Holy cow, we've been watching him for a while, right?
Hey,
is this it? This has got to be it.
Nothing would surprise me with him anymore, right? I think we're still going to see him 2 years from now. I don't know what it's going to look like, but he'll still be.
I teased him at ACC Media Day and told him I was going to play with him, come back and play with him. If he can keep playing, I can come back and play with him.
I mean, we were in the Mohegan Sun pre-pandemic, and he was in the lineup. I'm like, holy cow, man, this guy.
Yeah, and hey, when it comes to, especially with guards, right, I think that's one of the most valuable things you can have in this sport is an experienced backcourt. And I think, my takeaway from this game, and we'll get to the Illinois side of it in a minute, but, Illinois, even though they did have the three freshmen, if you include Dane Danger in that, and I thought that was a big part of their struggles in the end game, but they've got experience on their own too. Coleman Hawkins is a guy who's played a lot of games. Terrence Shannon, Matthew Meyer, obviously not in the Illinois program, but they've played a lot of games. But to me, the thing that felt so different and very distinctly there with Virginia that didn't feel like it was there for Illinois was that Virginia has such a clearly defined rotation and roles even right now. Like they're almost really just playing like a 6.5 man rotation. I like what Vanderplas is giving them off the bench. I think that's new and feels different from last year, but man, those 5 starters are pretty much on the floor the whole game. And they all know what they're supposed to do. Franklin knows he's supposed to be out there and hunt shots. Beekman knows he's supposed to be a secondary creator. And I felt like we're still watching a really, really talented Illinois team try and figure that out on the fly that has a bunch of different combinations of either young guys who are going to get a lot better or old guys who still don't really know where they fit into the mix within all of that newness. And that's a really, really powerful thing, especially early in the season, but it's going to be there all season long for Virginia. So
the good thing you want to have, though, is if you're Illinois, you want to have talent, and they got talent. So they got dudes. So if you want, everybody's trying to figure this thing out. But if you want to figure it out, I'd rather figure it out with some dudes than trying to figure it out when I don't know where the hell I'm getting my points and stuff from. So I think the Illini is going to be fine. I'm not really worried about them.
You're right. Let's we're going to do the Illinois side of this in just a moment. But first, we actually have an interview from the Field of 68's own Jeff Goodman with Virginia head coach Tony Bennett.
A pretty good weekend here. I don't know if it could have been much better. You beat Baylor. You beat Illinois, 2 top 25 teams. What did you learn about your team here?
Yeah, no, this tournament is there's, again, I said you could go 2-0, 0-2, or 1-1 and still be a solid team, and you're going to learn a lot. And, you know, this championship game against Illinois, they have some young guards, but, boy, are they physical and athletic. And again, it was good for our guys to be in, you know, tight games and have to execute down the stretch, a little different than the Baylor game. But I thought, you know, Reese Beekman and his play was really good down the stretch defensively and offensively, but everybody had to do things and play through some physicality, and it was, again, the environment was legit. So that's what you want.
How much does experience, we've talked about over the last few years, teams that win it all, your team that won it all, Carolina, Villanova, all these teams, Baylor, have experience. Your team this year has experience. How much of a factor will that be?
Yeah, I mean, that's been the formula as long as I've been playing and coaching that. And, you know, even I think that's becoming more relevant in today's game, but having guys that have been through the wars and, you know, to have, whether it's these COVID years or guys that, you know, can play in their 5th year of college basketball or 4th year, significant. So there is no substitute for it, and we've always tried to build our programs by growing them up. All right, we got some transfers, but there are guys that have been in it. Kihei's in his 5th year with me. Francisco's in his 5th year, and Reese is in his 3rd year. And then the addition of these other guys has been significant. So
you feel pretty good. You're going to hit the blackjack table or anything before you leave? I mean, listen, you've been on a roll here.
You're feeling lucky. I think my wife, I need to win some back for my wife's doing, so maybe I'll try.
All right, congrats. Thanks, Tom.
So my favorite part of doing these shows is all the off-air tidbits that I get from smart people like Matt McCall and Randolph Childress. So while that interview was playing for you, RC was giving us some detailed additional thoughts on Virginia. And my question to you, RC, do you think Virginia at this stage of the season is the biggest threat in the ACC?
Well, I don't think, yeah. I mean, you could say that, but I don't think they're, no one's surprised. I mean, they were picked to be second. So if you second and you win it, I don't think that's a massive leap. So that's not, no one's surprised. I think this team, we know they're going to defend. Now they're scoring on the perimeter. Amon Franklin is really reverting back to the guy that was at Indiana scoring wise. And now he's, you know, offering a consistent offensive output. Reese Beekman, Kihei Clark, we're talking about McNeely coming from the bench, but Vanderplas is giving them something that they, you know, perimeter-wise. He didn't make threes tonight, but he still had 8 and 10. You know, he still contributed. He had 14, you know, in yesterday against Baylor. So the other day against Baylor. They have balance. The only thing I think this team is missing that we're accustomed to Virginia teams that have made deep runs have is that ability to switch at their 4 spot. They usually just go show hard, hedge with the 5-man, and then 1 through 4, they were all really good on-ball defenders and switching. I don't think they have that on this team. That's the only thing they're missing. If they had that, they'd be hard to keep from getting to Houston at the Final Four. I mean, be honest, because they're going to control the pace. And I've said this about them when the Baylor game. They control the pace. And if you play Virginia, it's the first to 60. And if you can play, I don't care, your team could usually have a system where you're on pace to play at 100. You're not playing at that pace against Virginia. They're not going to let you do it.
All right, one of these moments in this show, I got 29 minutes left in the show. I'm going to get one of the two of you guys to answer one of my pointed questions here. You guys are playing politician on me too well, RC. You know that you and I have had this before. You're a great question dodger, but I'm throwing this one at Mr. McCall real quick, and then we'll talk Illinois.
Let's do it.
Put your coaching shoes on for me, Matt. Let's fast forward to March. Let's fast forward to the third weekend in March or second, whatever it is, March 17, 18, right? You get to pick your matchup. Do you want to play North Carolina at the end of this season, or do you want to play Virginia at the end of this season?
I want to play North Carolina. I think North Carolina is dealing with a little bit, and this is hard to say because it's North Carolina, but I think expectations are one of the hardest things to deal with in sports. And when I was the head coach at Chattanooga and we had won 29 games and we came back the next year, we had to let core group back. We had some guys back, going through that next season, that first national championship in 06, where there was really no expectations on that team at Florida, to going to the following year in 07 when all the expectations are on it. You're just dealing with something different. And that's what Carolina is going to be dealing with this year as they go through this season with all those guys back. Not saying that they can't get to the Final Four, not saying they can't win a national championship, but I just think Virginia at that point in the season with their team, their core, their coach, I don't want to see them. I do not want to play against them in the tournament.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that answer.